Hello everyone and welcome to IVSA Bidhar's official YouTube channel Pashuvani. Pashuvani is a platform that provides you with veterinary education. Our video series consists of practical relevant lecture videos, field approach clinical aspects, guide and tip for future careers, smart content related to both animal and veterinary science. We believe sharing is caring, so please like, comment and subscribe for further updates. And now, let's welcome a speaker of today's episode of Saturday's Sharing.
Dear students, today we are going to discuss one of the most important endocrine disorders of dogs and cats, diabetes mellitus. Now, if you look at the PowerPoint first slide, you will be able to see 5 photographs which I have purposefully included in the first slide. Out of those 5 photographs, 3 photographs you can see a typical whitish discoloration of lens. So it is opacity of lens, which we call it as cataract, and cataract is a very cardinal sign of diabetes mellitus in dogs. In other 2 photographs you can see the dogs, they are quite obese. So there is a you can say that obesity and diabetes mellitus, they go hand in hand. Then let us go to the next slide. You can see there the definition of diabetes mellitus is, it is an endocrine disorder resulting due to absolute or relative deficiency of insulin. So you should understand and try to remember these 2 words and always try to use it whenever you want to define diabetes mellitus. So it could be absolute insulin deficiency, means the insulin is secreted by beta cells of pancreas, isn't it? So the pancreas, they lose its ability to produce any more insulin. So there is the absolute insulin deficiency resulting into diabetes mellitus. The other possibility also we have to keep it in mind, what we call it as relative deficiency of insulin. So this relative deficiency means the insulin is there but it is not acting. So what is the site of action of the insulin? Insulin attaches itself to the receptors on the cells. So once this bond is formed, the pores are opened and then the glucose enters in the cell for the cell metabolism, isn't it? So what happens is, over a period of time, there is a relative deficiency of insulin, or we call it as insulin resistance. So because of which the attachment of insulin to the cell receptor goes down, and thereby the utilization of glucose by the cell is disrupted. So there also there is a possibility of diabetes mellitus. So because of this, in human beings it has been clearly categorized into 2 categories. One, they call it as juvenile onset diabetes mellitus. It is nothing but the insulin dependent diabetes mellitus, IDDM. Whereas the other type of diabetes mellitus seen in dogs, in the human beings, is maturity onset diabetes mellitus. It is also called as non-insulin diabetes mellitus. So what we call it as relative deficiency or insulin resistance, that is very much well marked in the second type, that is non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus or adult onset diabetes mellitus in human beings. Now there is a lot of research going on whether this type of non-insulin dependent NIDDM does exist in dogs and cats. There are few reports about it, but let us concentrate only on absolute deficiency. So always whenever you are defining diabetes mellitus, you have to say that it is an endocrine disorder resulting due to absolute or relative deficiency of insulin. Then the disease is marked by few important clinical signs, which include polyuria, polydipsia, polyphagia. There is rapid loss of condition and there is a sudden development and onset of cataract. Majority of the times it is bilateral cataract. Okay, so this is regarding the second slide. Let us go to the third slide. In third slide, I have described the epidemiology of diabetes mellitus. The disease is more common in geriatric dogs. The range is between 4 to 14 years. And the peak of the incidence of diabetes mellitus is between 7 to 9 years. The females, they are twice more susceptible when compared to the male, and there are several reports which suggest that certain breeds of dogs, they are highly susceptible to diabetes mellitus, which includes poodles, dachshunds, beagles, terriers, and recently few papers are reporting that Labrador retriever or Labrador, both type of Labradors, they also have an increased susceptibility to diabetes mellitus. Okay, we have to understand the pathogenesis of diabetes mellitus. So already in the definition we have seen that there is either absolute insulin deficiency or there is a development of insulin resistance. In both the situations, when insulin is not acting or insulin is deficient, the utilization of glucose at cellular level is not taking place because glucose doesn't enter within the cell for cell metabolism. So because of that, the glucose concentration in the blood keeps on increasing, which we can call it as unabated hyperglycemia, means uncontrolled hyperglycemia, which can result ultimately into glycosuria. And if glycosuria continues for a longer period of time and a cellular hypoglycemia takes place, it may result into a complicated stage of diabetes mellitus, which we call it as ketonemia and ketonuria. Then polyuria. Polyuria is also a distinct feature of diabetes mellitus. And why does polyuria occurs in case of diabetes mellitus? So you have to understand the basic concept that when the glucose concentration goes beyond renal threshold, which has been understood to be 180 milligram per deciliter, the glucose filtration starts through the nephrons and the glucose is excreted. Glucose is having a hyperosmolarity. It is a higher molecular weight substance. So when it gets excreted, it carries water along with it. Because of this, there is an increased hyperosmolarity of the urine, and because of that there is a polyuria. So when polyuria is there, to compensate polyuria, there is a concomitant polydipsia. The animal will show increased thirst, so that's why the animal drinks more water. So it is polydipsia. Then one more P is polyphagia. Polyphagia is nothing but increased demand for food or increased appetite. So the reason behind this increased appetite in case of diabetic dogs is because of stimulation of satiety center. Satiety center is directly related with a hypoglycemic index of the person. Okay, so what happens is, though there is a plasma hyperglycemia, means in plasma the glucose concentration is more, but this glucose is not reaching to the within the cell for cell metabolism. So as a matter of fact, there is a cellular hypoglycemia. So this cellular hypoglycemia keeps on sending a wrong signal to the body, and in turn it also gives a wrong signal to the satiety center, and because of the overstimulation of the satiety center, the diabetic animal shows a stage of polyphagia. It keeps on demanding more food. Okay, so this we have to keep it always in mind. So the owner of a dog will always complain that I used to give 2 feedings to my dog, but nowadays what I am finding is the dog is always demanding more food. On the other hand, in spite of having good appetite, then it is taking regular food or rather than more than the required food, he is losing weight. Okay, so polyphagia and rapid loss of condition, these are very distinctly identifiable clinical findings in case of diabetes mellitus. And then there is a rapid development of cataract. So this cataract is developed because of the glucose concentration within the lens capsule. So the concentration of glucose within the lens capsule is exactly comparable with the plasma glucose level. So in normal individuals, whatever the plasma glucose concentration is there, the same concentration is there within the lens capsule. So when there is a plasma hyperglycemia, automatically the more glucose enters in the lens capsule. So excess of glucose which is accumulated in the lens, it is utilized and a final product is formed, that is called as sorbitol. Sorbitol being a increased osmolarity hyperosmolarity type of molecule, it absorbs or it attracts more water within the lens capsule, and because of the retention of more water within the lens capsule, there is swelling of lens fibers, and these fibers they rupture, so transparent lens becomes opaque. So opacity of lens is nothing but cataract. So this rapidly developing cataract is also a very distinct feature of diabetes mellitus. We will see the clinical signs and other features of diabetes mellitus afterwards. Okay guys, let us go ahead with the diabetes mellitus. Now in this fifth slide, you can see the clinical signs of diabetes mellitus. So the 3 P's you have to always keep it in mind whenever you are suspecting a case of diabetes mellitus: polyuria, polydipsia and polyphagia. And in pathogenesis we have understood why there is a polyuria, why there is polydipsia, and why there is polyphagia in diabetes mellitus. Now this is very, again I'm repeating it once again, rapid loss of condition in spite of good appetite. This will be the always complaint from the dog owners, that my dog, it keeps on demanding food, so I am giving good food, but in spite of that I am finding that my dog, my pet is losing its condition. Okay, so rapid loss of condition is very distinct clinical feature of diabetes mellitus. Then likewise, rapid development of cataract. Okay, cataract you must have seen, we call it a geriatric cataract, isn't it? So cataract develops in geriatric dogs also, but this development is very slow. Okay, whereas the diabetic cataract develops very rapidly in hardly 1 or 2 weeks. Both the eyes they develop cataract simultaneously. So bilateral rapidly developing cataract are very distinct feature of diabetes mellitus, and we have understood in pathogenesis why there is a cataract in diabetes mellitus. Then one more thing which you have to keep it in mind in clinical signs is recurrent skin infections and recurrent urinary tract infections. Okay, so because the justifiable reason for urinary tract infection is the glucose is being excreted in the urine, isn't it? The glycosuria is there. Glucose being a very rich medium for the microbial growth, so some of the maybe essential microflora or unwanted microflora, they take up the upper hand, they utilize the glucose, colonize and set up the infection. So that's why the dog is repeatedly presented to your clinic with urinary tract infection, repeated urinary tract infection. Likewise, recurrent skin infection is also a very major problem in diabetic dogs. Apart from that, there is lethargy, weakness, early exhaustion. Okay, and undiagnosed cases of diabetes mellitus, there is always a threat of complication of diabetes mellitus, that is diabetic ketoacidosis, which can end up into coma and death of the patient also. Okay, now the slide number 6 and 7, in this typical photographs of diabetic dogs has been shown here. For the first 6th slide, all you can see here that a mature cataract has been developed in both the eyes of these diabetic dogs. Okay, then in 7th slide you can see the obese dogs. So I told you obesity and the development of diabetes it goes hand in hand. So that's why obese dogs, they have a higher inclination, higher tendency for the development of diabetes. So this you have to always keep it in mind in history taking or observation of the animal. Obese dogs, they always have a higher inclination for the development of diabetes. So that is the purpose why these 2 slides have been included. Let us come down to the most important part of it is diagnosis. How you are going to diagnose a case of diabetes mellitus. First is the history and clinical features. In history, always you will find the dog is geriatric, means age old. It is definitely more than 4 to 5 years, or it may be even up to 10 to 12 year dog. So aged dogs, geriatric dogs, they have a tendency for diabetes mellitus. Clinical features, you have seen 3 P's: polydipsia, polyuria, polyphagia. Apart from recurrent skin infection, recurrent urinary tract infection, then cataract, then loss of condition. These are all very distinct features which will make you to suspect that the dog is suffering from diabetes mellitus. Then how you are going to confirm it? So the preliminary screening test for diabetes mellitus is Benedict test on the urine. Okay. Every Benedict reagent bottle will have that color chart. So usually blue is negative, then the next is green. It says that the urine sample is positive for 0.5% glucose. Then it is red, yellowish red, you can say it is 1%. Then yellowish brick red 1.5%, and brick red it is called as more than 2%. So these color charts are always there with the Benedict reagent. Okay, so what you have to do is, after heating, you have to see whether there is a change in the color of the Benedict reagent. Okay, if there is no color, there is no glycosuria. If the color change is there, you say Benedict test is positive and there is glycosuria, and depending upon the color change, you have to grade it as 0.5%, 1%, 1.5%, and 2%. Okay, so this gives you a qualitative analysis. Means it says that the glycosuria is there, and it can be to some extent correlated with the plasma glucose value. For example, if it turns to be green, we say that 0.5%. So 0.5% means the blood glucose is always more than 180 milligram per deciliter, and it may be ranging between 180 to 220 milligram or 210 milligram per deciliter. So it is an approximate guess. If you want to know the exact blood glucose, you have to go for the estimation of blood glucose in plasma or blood. Okay, so likewise a qualitative analysis can be done. That's why we call it as preliminary screening test for diabetes mellitus is the Benedict test. Okay, when the Benedict test is positive, you have to go for blood glucose estimation. This blood glucose estimation is done on two occasions. We call it as fasting blood glucose and postprandial, means post feeding blood sample you have to collect. So you have to fast the dog at least for 12 hours, and then early morning sample you have to submit it to the laboratory, where they will normally use enzymatic method to estimate the glucose, and they will intimate what is the fasting blood glucose. Then you have to give the regular meal to the dog, and then postprandial, after 2 hours, 1.5 to 2 hours, you have to collect the second sample, that is postprandial sample, and you have to estimate the glucose. Okay, so the upper limit for fasting blood glucose is 105 to 110 milligram per deciliter, and upper limit for postprandial blood sample is 140 milligram per deciliter. These values always you keep it in mind. Okay, 105 to 110 milligram per deciliter is the limit for fasting blood glucose to call it as normal, and it should not go more than 140 milligram per deciliter in postprandial sample in normal. So if these values have changed substantially, you can say that the diabetes mellitus is there. Okay, then one gold standard test is there. They call it as glucose tolerance test in dogs. So it is a simple type of test. A test meal containing a specific quantum of glucose is fed to the dog, and then its plasma glucose is estimated over a period of time. So oral glucose tolerance test means a specific glucose meal is fed to the dog, and every 30 minutes the blood sample is collected up to 4 hours post feeding. Okay, and then the graph is plotted how the glucose concentration varies or changes in the blood. So if you want to say what happens in normal animal, so in normal animals also there is a hyperglycemia, because you are giving a concentrated glucose meal to the dog, isn't it? So let us presume a normal dog is having around 95 milligram per deciliter as a pre-feeding glucose level. So this 95 milligram per deciliter, it keeps on increasing. Okay, so depending upon the test dose, it may increase up to 140, 150, 160 milligram per deciliter, and then at one particular point it keeps on declining, because the insulin will take upper hand, and then the glucose utilization starts. So maybe after 2.5 hours, the glucose concentration will come down to pre-feeding level, means 95 milligram, or even sometimes it may go slightly below than that. Even it may become 90 milligram per deciliter, but again after 30 minutes it will come to 95 to 100 milligram per deciliter. So there is a typical curve, normal curve of glucose tolerance test in normal animal. This doesn't happen in diabetic dogs. In diabetic dogs, first and foremost thing, it will not be 95 milligram per deciliter, it will be always more than 130 to 140 milligram per deciliter. isn't it? And this concentration keeps on increasing. It goes beyond 180, 200, 220 milligram per deciliter. At one particular point of time, there is a decline in the blood glucose level, but it will never come to the pre-feeding level. So it says that it goes like that. So from 140 milligram per deciliter, it may reach up to 220 milligram per deciliter. It may fall down to 180 to 190 milligram per deciliter and remain constant there. It will never come to the pre-feeding glucose level. So this is called as glucose tolerance test, and it is considered as a gold standard confirmatory test for diabetes mellitus. Apart from that, few people have also reported the supporting parameters, which includes the low density lipoproteins, because fat metabolism also gets affected in case of diabetes. So elevated low density lipoproteins, cholesterol, ALT, alanine transferase, these enzymatic increase is also considered to be a supportive parameters for the diagnosis of diabetes mellitus. Let us go to the next slide. So here the photograph, it clearly indicates on the left side you can see two test tubes are there. In one sample it is a normal urine, the blue color has not changed. In other test tube you can see the blue color of the benedict agent has changed to brick red color. So it is a positive sample. So negative and positive samples have been compared. Now the estimation of blood glucose, as I told you, there are variety of methods to estimate glucose in the blood. So in most of the laboratories they use the enzymatic estimation. They call it as glucose oxidase per oxidase, GOD-POD method for the estimation of plasma glucose. But one handy glucometer is always available. It is an electronic device which has been sensitized to detect the blood glucose level. So it comes with a strip and it comes with the electronic meter. So what you have to do is you have to fix that strip in the glucometer. Then you have to puncture the nearest, preferably the ear vein. You have to rupture, or you have to puncture it, and then one drop of blood you have to feed it to the strip. So as soon as you feed that blood drop to the strip, within 10 seconds you will get the reading. So approximate blood glucose at that particular point of time will be indicated. So now here you can read it is 57 milligram per deciliter. So it is always within the normal limit. But in diabetic dog, it will be always more than 110, 120 milligram per deciliter. Okay. So random blood glucose also will be more than 120 milligram per deciliter in diabetic dogs. Okay. Let us go to the next slide. In 10th slide, we are discussing about the treatment of diabetes mellitus. Okay. In treatment of diabetes mellitus, 2 points you have to always keep it in mind. When the diabetic dog is presented to you, you have to identify whether the dog is in uncomplicated stage of diabetes mellitus or complicated stage of diabetes mellitus. Then how to differentiate it? So you have to do Rothera's test to detect ketonuria, and you have to do the Benedict test for the presence of glycosuria. So glycosuria along with ketonuria, it says that the stage is complicated and it is a diabetic ketoacidosis stage. So simple glycosuria without ketonuria, it is called as uncomplicated diabetes mellitus, and the treatment is like this. So the treatment of diabetes mellitus, uncomplicated diabetes mellitus, it includes the insulin. Insulin has to be given at the rate of 0.5 to 1 unit per kg body weight by subcutaneous route. Now you have to see which type of insulin you have to prefer. There are plenty of insulin preparations available in the market. Beef insulin is there, porcine insulin is there, human retard insulin is there. So it has been proven, and there are reports that the porcine insulin is having a similar amino acid sequence as that of dog. So that's why porcine insulin is preferred for the treatment of diabetes mellitus in dogs. That is one thing. Then you have to choose a long acting insulin for the treatment of uncomplicated diabetes mellitus, because you want to retain the action of insulin for a period of about 8 to 12 hours. Okay, so that's why it is a long acting. So slowly the insulin level will increase and it will remain at a static level for a certain period of time. So you have to choose a long acting insulin porcine insulin for the treatment of diabetes mellitus in dogs. So the long-acting insulins, they are available in 2-3 forms. They call it as dog is weighing 20 kgs. The dog is weighing 20 kgs and having diabetes. 0.5 into 20, it comes to 10 units. So the dog requires 10 units of long-acting porcine insulin to be given by subcutaneous route. Okay, so two things again you have to keep it in mind, that the owner should be educated, because this requirement, insulin has to be given every day on that particular time. So that's why the dog cannot be presented every day for the treatment of diabetes mellitus. So you have to train the owner so that the insulin will be injected at a specific period of time. Okay, morning 8 o'clock, let us presume. So the insulin has to be given every day without fail. Okay, so that's why the education and the training of owner is very much important. Then it has been said that how the dose of insulin and the diet should be, or the food intake should be monitored. So it is always said that 25% of whatever you are giving food to the dog should be given early morning at around 8 o'clock, and immediately a long-acting insulin is given at the rate of 0.5 to 1 unit, 0.5 units or 1 unit per kg body weight, whatever you are choosing by subcutaneous route. Okay, so the meaning is slowly the insulin level will rise, and this rise in insulin level should match with hyperglycemia in dog. So what they say is around 6 to 8 hours after this, you have to give 75% of the meal to the dog. Okay, so when you are giving at 8 a.m. morning the insulin dose, around 2 o'clock you should give around 75% of meal, remaining 75%, so that the hyperglycemia will occur in half an hour, and 6 to 8 hours where the peak insulin level has reached into the plasma, automatically it will match with the hyperglycemic index of the patient also, and there is a proper utilization of glucose. So this always has to be kept it in mind. Okay, you have to divide the food into 25% and 75%. Early morning 8 o'clock you have to give the insulin, give the 25% of food, and then after 6 hours or 8 hours you have to give 75% of the meal, and that will match with the rise in the adequate level of insulin, which will take care of the hyperglycemia occurring because of the food intake. Okay, so this you have to always keep it in mind. So here one small graph is there. You can see here 200 milligram. In the graph you can see how the influence of insulin will be there. So 200 milligram will be there in diabetic dog, because it is already hyperglycemia. You are giving insulin at 0 hour. Isn't it? So rapidly there is a drop in the glucose level. So maybe around, what they say is, around 8 to 10 hours there is a drop in hypoglycemia occurs at around 8 to 10 hours. So at that particular point of time you have to give the remaining part of food, so that the hyperglycemia and the insulin will automatically match. Okay, so that is what. Then monitoring. This is also a very important part of managing the diabetes mellitus. Okay, when you are giving the dog the dose of 0.5 units per kg body weight, and we have presumed that the dog weighing around 20 kgs is having diabetes mellitus, the dose is 10 units. So the 10 units of porcine long-acting insulin has to be given. Okay, so next day morning the dog has to be presented to monitor glycosuria. Why it is required? Because you are not sure. The dose ranges between 0.5 units to 1 unit. So what is the requirement of dog? To assume, to calculate the exact quantity of insulin required for the dog, the glycosuria has to be monitored. So early morning the blood urine sample has to be collected, and you have to see the percent of glycosuria in the early morning sample after giving insulin. So it is always advisable that the dog is always maintained with 0.5 to 1% glycosuria with the dosing of the insulin. So you have given 10 units of insulin earlier day, next day morning you are getting 0.5% glycosuria. it is perfectly all right. You have to continue with the same dose. The dog is tolerating, and that's why the glucose concentration has not dropped below whatever is required. So the dog is being maintained at 0.5% glycosuria. Negative Benedict test always gets confused. When negative Benedict test is there in the next day morning sample, the urine is not having any more glucose, it is a confusion state. So that's why negative Benedict test suggests that the dose has to be modified. Okay, so whatever dose you are giving, it is more. Okay, so you have to reduce the dose. So what it says is the reduce the total dose by 1 unit. You have given 10 units to a 20 kg dog, reduce it by 1 unit, means you give only 9 units to that dog. Okay, and then again monitor glycosuria. Okay, so if 0.5 glycosuria is there, instead of 10 units, the dog is requiring only 9 units of insulin. Like that, monitoring is always better. The dog always should be maintained with 0.5% glycosuria. Why it is required? Because when 0.5% glycosuria is there, you are always sure that the glucose concentration in the body is more than 180 milligram per deciliter. Because of that, the glucose is appearing in the urine. If no glycosuria is there, the Benedict test is negative, there is whole confusion. How much drop is there? So that's why it is always a risk that the dog may end up into hypoglycemic shock. So to avoid that, the dog is always maintained with 0.5% glycosuria. That is the best indication. Okay, so this has to be always kept it in mind. It is not like that you have to give 0.5 units and forget it. You have to monitor it for at least 1 to 2 weeks what is going on. Okay, so that is they call it as dose modification of in the requirement of insulin in a diabetic patient. Okay, so this you have to keep it in mind. Then coming down to the other type of diabetes mellitus, what we call it as complicated, means the diabetes mellitus has entered into a complicated stage where glycosuria is also there, ketonuria is also there. Okay, so you have to first stabilize the patient. So for that, it has always been advised that there is a requirement of hospitalization. The patient should be kept on saline drip, and here you have to give ultra short acting insulin. What you have done in uncomplicated diabetes mellitus, you have chosen a long acting insulin, but here the requirement is rapidly acting insulin, so that's why you have to choose ultra short acting insulin. So it should be given at the rate of 1 unit per kg body weight. Okay, so again come down to conclusion that 20 kg dog is presented with complicated diabetes mellitus. So 1 unit per kg body weight means the dog is requiring 20 units of insulin. And which type of insulin? It should be ultra short acting insulin. Okay, so then they say that 25% of calculated dose is given intravenously and 75% of the dose is given by intramuscular route. So 25% means 20 units is the requirement, 5 units should be given intravenous, 15 units should be given by intramuscular route, and then you have to catheterize the patient and monitor glycosuria. So if the blood glucose or the urine sugar appears or it falls below 1%, less than 1%, glycosuria is there, immediately the IV fluid should be shifted to 5% normal dextrose or DNS. Instead of giving saline, plain saline, you have to shift the IV fluid as 5% DNS. What it says that there is a rapid decline in the glucose and it is falling below 180 milligram per deciliter. So it may end up into hypoglycemic shock. So the glycosuria 0.5 to 1% you have to always maintain. If it falls below that, immediately the IV solution should be shifted to DNS instead of normal saline. Okay, and once the condition gets stabilized condition means anywhere the blood glucose is ranging between 150 to 200 milligram per deciliter, it is said that the patient has been stabilized and it can be sent to home. Okay, and then whatever you are following for uncomplicated diabetes mellitus, the same thing you can follow it, long acting insulin, like that. So in complicated diabetes mellitus, the first priority is immediately you have to see that the glucose concentration drops, because there is a severe hyperglycemia, and because of that other complications have taken place. So ultra short acting insulin should be given at the rate of 1 unit per kg body weight. Okay, so that you have to always keep it in mind. Then coming down to this, purposefully I have included as one more slide, because there are few reports, even my own publication is that there is a possibility of non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus in dogs, NIDDM. Okay, so the treatment of NIDDM in human beings is different. They do not use the insulin, they use hypoglycemic drugs, and the top pharmaceutical product for the treatment of non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus is sulfonylureas. Okay, so these sulfonylureas, they act by 3 modes. One, it activates insulin release from the active pancreas. Then it activates the insulin receptor sites on the body cells, so that the glucose will be utilized by the cells, and it also suppresses the hepatic gluconeogenesis, which is responsible for complication of diabetes mellitus. Okay, by 3 ways the sulfonylurea, they try to stabilize the non-insulin diabetes mellitus in case of human beings. And here also few reports are there, few dogs have been treated with sulfonylurea, and the results are variable. It requires further research and final conclusions whether it also exists. So there is a feeling among the practitioners that around 2 to 3% of the dogs, they may be having non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. Okay, then most important thing in diabetes management of diabetes mellitus is counseling of the owner, because once the diabetes is detected in the pet, it is going to stay with the pet throughout his life. So that you have to make the owner to understand it is not a disease where the treatment will totally completely cure the disease. It will never happen. So the dog, the quality of life of the pet has to be improved by regular dosing of insulin. Then regular dosing of insulin also has got its own disadvantages, because insulin resistance may develop over a period of time, because you are injecting insulin externally. So anything we are giving externally is likely to develop antibodies. Okay, so the efficacy of insulin goes down over a period of time. What we have seen is 0.5 units per kg body weight for 20 kg dog, means the 10 units you continue to give, but after 2 or 3 or 4 years you will find that the same 10 units of insulin is not effective for a 20 kg dog. Okay, so that says that the insulin resistance develops in diabetic animals, and the diabetic complications, they are always there. The diabetic complications like diabetic neuropathy, then diabetic nephropathy, they are always there. So always try to see that the blood glucose is monitored regularly. The diabetic dog or cat needs to be presented at least once in 4-5 months for regular checkup, so that the dog will be monitored or the pet will be monitored, and you will see whether the diabetes is in control or not. Okay, so these are the few things which you have to always keep it in management of diabetes mellitus. So this is the gist of diabetes mellitus in dogs. So what we have understood in today's lecture is what is diabetes mellitus, what type of diabetes mellitus is commonly encountered in dogs and cats, what are the epidemiological features of diabetes mellitus in dogs, then what is the pathogenesis, how the disease progresses, what are the clinical findings of diabetes mellitus, then the diagnosis, how you are going to diagnose a case of diabetes mellitus, and lastly, how do you treat a case of diabetes mellitus. And the keyword is management of diabetes mellitus. It is not a treatment of diabetes mellitus. It is a lifelong obligation by the owner to see that the quality of the pet with diabetes is improved by regular dose of insulin. And one more thing I want to add, that regular exercise. It has been proved beyond doubt the utilization of glucose by the muscle cells is independent of insulin. Okay, It has been proved beyond doubt in human medicine. So that's why more of exertion, more of muscular activity, utilization of glucose is more in spite of insulin deficiency. So that's why a regular exercise will definitely help in maintaining the plasma glucose level at a steady level. So exercise is also one of the most important keyword in management of diabetes mellitus.